Hello everyone and welcome to this video, Some Frontier video. Now in this video I'm going to be showing you how to actually make a virtual machine and install Microsoft Windows 3.1 and more importantly MS-DOS 6.22. Now the reason I'm going to be showing you this is because, well, firstly, I want to show you how to do this in a virtual machine. Now, why would you want to do this? Basically, there are some people that still have older software titles that they actually want to be able to run on their computer. And as Windows 3.1 and, well, basically as older software does not run well on your version of Windows, for example 64-bit versions of Windows will not run 16-bit applications, there really is little choice but to go down the virtual machine route. Also, you do have the slight issue that also a few people have actually been asking me various questions pertaining to the installation and configuration of MS-DOS and Windows 3.x. So, while these instructions are specifically based on how to do this in Virtual PC 2007 Service Pack 1, you can loosely base this tutorial on a real computer. Bearing in mind though that some of the drivers that we will install may be different on your own personal computer. Of course, I will do my best to try and point out some of the differences. Also, a couple of notes. You may notice, well actually you probably might not actually, because I'm only showing a wee bit of the desktop, but I am running Virtual PC 2007 in Windows 7. This is entirely possible, but only if you've not installed XP mode and Windows Virtual PC. If you've installed those two, you'll have to uninstall them before you go ahead and install Virtual PC 2007. Otherwise, Windows will throw up a compatibility error and will not allow Virtual PC to install or run. Windows 8 users, I'm sorry, you guys have lucked out, because at the moment Virtual PC 2007 doesn't seem to run under Windows 8. There are fixes out there, but as yet one of my friends online has tried it and it's not actually worked. Okay. So that aside, let's imagine you've all got Virtual PC installed. Oh, very nice. And oh, XP users, you're lucky. You get to join in on this one. Virtual PC 2007 runs no problem at all under XP. Right. What are you going to need? First of all, you're going to need the MS-DOS 6.22 disks. Either that or disk images. I'm going to be using disk images because it's quicker and I'm not wearing out media. You'll also need the Windows 3.1 diskettes. Now, the Windows 3.1 diskettes, you can actually make things easier, because what you can do is if you create a folder on your desktop, copy out all of the files from the Windows 3.1 diskettes, put them into that folder, you can then burn that to a CD, and it will make the installation of Windows 3.1 a lot easier and a lot quicker. Now, I've actually got a CD with Windows 3.1 and all the drivers needed to run Virtual PC on it. And again, it has been made into a CD image. Now, we're going to install some CD-ROM drivers. Now, this is going to be compatible with any computer that has an Atapi CD-ROM drive. An Atapi CD-ROM drive is basically one that connects to an IDE controller, which generally will be on the motherboard. And yes, it does seem really quite trivial now that IDE CD-ROM drives will be Atapi, but back in the days of Windows 3.1, there was a lot of proprietary CD-ROM controller cards around, and they only worked for specific drives. And yes, you've guessed it, they needed their own drivers. So, unfortunately, I can't help you with this tutorial, because unfortunately, this is for an Atapi CD drive. Virtual PC emulates Atapi CD-ROM device. Now, the drivers, again, like I said, things are going to be different. Logitech Cyberman mouse drivers, the reason I suggested these ones is because they are readily available. You can generally download them onto the internet. My suggestion is you download a program called WinImage. WinImage is available, it is shareware, and it will enable you to write things to floppy disk images. However, the Microsoft IntelliPoint drivers will do just as well. Although, like I said, they are actually less easy to download. And because Mega Upload has now gone, I cannot redistribute these files. So thank you to the Department of Justice. I mean, yes, I could redistribute the files, but I mean, Mega Upload was just the easiest way to do it. So until I find a way to circumvent the law, which I hope they are doing, then I'm not going to be able to put up the Microsoft IntelliPoint drivers. The only reason I have them is because I have a Packard Bell with a Restore CD with them on it. Anyway, another driver that you're going to need for Virtual PC. This isn't actually required, it's just if you want to connect it to the internet. The DEC 21140 Ethernet driver. Okay, now you may have noticed here I put for more sound features, you're going to want the Creative Labs Sound Blaster 16 drivers. The Virtual PC emulates the Creative Labs Sound Blaster 16 AWE32 sound card, and yes, you can actually use the standard Sound Blaster 1.0 or 1.5 drivers that come with Windows 3.1, but doing so will mean that you do not get MIDI of any sort, which is a shame. Anyway, enough of that, let's start. Okay, so here is your Virtual PC window. Going to notice a few things. On the left, there's a list of all the virtual machines. If you've just installed Virtual PC, this screen will be empty. You have a few buttons. New, that creates a Virtual PC. Settings, here you can adjust the settings of any given Virtual PC. Remove, that will remove the Virtual PC from the menu, but will not delete it from the hard drive. So if you're wanting to free up disk space, bear that in mind. You'll need to go to the Documents folder, and there you'll find a folder called My Virtual Machines. Click on that, and that's where all your virtual machines are stored, and then you can delete everything from there. And then of course you've got the all important start button. It's probably why this doesn't work in Windows 8, because it uses a start button. But basically this will switch on any of the virtual machines. For those of you still wondering what Virtual PC is and does at this point, Virtual PC, it will emulate a computer within your computer. If you can imagine this screen as a room full of computers, I can select any one of them and then just start it up. This is a Windows 7 machine. And oh yeah, I was working on that one. That didn't go so well. But you get the idea. It's emulating a computer. A broken computer, but a computer nonetheless. Okay, so let's start on ours. So I'm going to click New. Bear in mind, if you have just installed Virtual PC, the first time you launch it, this wizard will come up auto-magically. So we're just going to click Next at this screen. Now what we want to do is create a new virtual machine. So select that if it's not already selected and click Next. We want to name it. What should we name it? I know, let's name it Fred. Usually you'd choose a name a wee bit more descriptive, like Windows 98 machine or machine for playing DOS games, blah blah blah. Click Next. Now, Virtual PC doesn't natively support anything below Windows 98. However, the hardware that it emulates has not changed at all in any way. So you just click Other, click Next, and where it says recommended RAM 128 megs of RAM, we're actually going to dial that down. It seems like an odd thing to do, but trust me on this one, MS-DOS and Windows 3.1 do not like to have RAM above, let's say, 40 megabytes. Personally, if I was building an MS-DOS system, the maximum amount of RAM I would install would be 40. To be honest, the best amount, probably 32 megs. So that's what we're going to have here, 32. Now we're going to click Next. Now we need to create a new virtual hard disk. So let's do that. Click Next. Again, this is 16384 megabytes. Okay, bear with me here guys, because I'm going to do some maths. 1 gigabyte equals 1024 megabytes. So if you're wanting a hard disk of a particular size, if you want it in gigabytes, let's say we wanted a 2 gigabyte hard disk, what we would do is multiply 2 by 1024, and that is equal to 2048. And now I feel like my maths teacher. My maths teacher was full of wit, by the way. So here, I think we're just going to go for the gigabyte. So that'd be 1024 megabytes. Again, the reason I've dialed it down from 16 gigs is because MS-DOS uses the file system called FAT16. Basically, that file system will only support a maximum of 2 gigabytes per partition, 2.2. And even then, it says it will only support these partitions on a hard drive of a physical size up to 8.4 gigabytes. Now I think, in a way, that is complete cobbles, because I've had Windows for Workgroups 3.1 installed on a 60 gig hard drive on a FAT16 partition. But trust me, only really use the space what you're going to need, otherwise it'll just be a waste. Now, by default, Virtual PC uses what's called a dynamically expanding hard disk. Basically what that means is it won't actually use up 2 gigabytes of space straight away, it will just use what it needs. Basically, if you put a 3 megabyte file on the hard disk, then the hard disk size is going to be 3 megabytes. It literally is a couple of kilobytes as a hard disk file while it's empty. Now, they say that to avoid fragmentation, it would be a good idea to create a new hard disk manually and have it allocate all the space there and then. But be aware that if you do that, you'll want to reformat your hard drive if it's not already done so, and to be honest, in this day and age, I wouldn't be able to understand why, but you'll need to reformat your hard drive into NTFS. Because FAT32 will only support 2 gig file sizes. Anyway, just going to click next, and then we're going to click finish. Now, before we actually go into this virtual machine, I want to make a couple of changes. Now, let's say, for example, we want to get online. What we're going to need to do is go down to networking, and you may see that it has decided to latch on to the Realtek Ethernet port. That's not connected to the internet. In fact, I use the Ethernet port on this computer to supply internet connection sharing to older machines that I have through a crossover cable. The best one to use is shared networking. Literally, then your computer will basically share your computer's internet connection with virtual PCs. It will use DHCP, and everything will be all tasty, meat and gravy, neeps and gravy ties and shady, whatever. It'll be okay. It'll go well if you use shared networking. Hardware virtualization. If you have it, enable it. Seriously, enable it. Because the number of times I've seen Windows 3.1 crash in virtual PC on computers that don't have hardware assisted virtualization. Anyway, next thing we're going to do, if you plan to run this virtual PC at full screen, best thing you're going to do is use guest screen resolution. So that means that when you put the virtual PC to full screen by pressing the right Alt or Alt GR and Enter buttons, the screen will adjust the resolution auto-magically and you'll not end up with a tiny wee window in the middle of the monitor. Okay, so I think that's everything done. Obviously here you can select serial and parallel ports that the virtual machine will use. So if you had a piece of hardware that uses a serial or parallel port that you wanted to use with the virtual machine, make sure you set that up. Sound is enabled. Right, okay, now we are finally ready. So before we do anything, I want to go to floppy, and if you have a floppy drive installed and you want to load MS-DOS from the actual disks, you can click Use Drive A. I'm going to use a disk image. So here we are. So I'm going to select the disk image, click Open, Action, Restart, and then when I do, you'll see that the virtual PC will actually boot from disk 1 of MS-DOS setup. Okay, so this is where virtual PC and physical PC users, your installation procedure is basically going to be the same from now on. Well, until I tell you that it's going to be different again. So to set up MS-DOS, press enter. Now, users of physical machines, you might not get this message because your hard disk might have been pre-formatted or something. However, users of virtual PC will notice that basically MS-DOS setup will actually notice that the hard disk has not been set up, it's not been partitioned. Now, MS-DOS 6.22 is really quite friendly, and if you tell it to configure the unallocated disk space for you, it will do just that. Basically, it will then tell you it's going to restart the computer, keep the disk in the drive, and then it will go away and it will reformat the hard disk. Virtual PC users, this will happen in a second. Real computer users, this is going to take some time. Go and put the kettle on, go make yourself a nice wee cup of tea. Now, here you can set the date and the time. Physical PC users, again, if the date and time is out and your computer consistently doesn't keep the date and the time, you might need to look at your CMOS battery. If it is user replaceable, then just head down to your local hardware shop, or, well, not necessarily hardware, but head down to your local utility shop, go and buy yourself a CR2032 battery, and you'll be able to install it. And then your computer will keep the time again. However, some really old computers will have the battery soldered onto the motherboard. And here's some advice I got from UXW Bell. If you have a battery that is soldered up, well, if you have a dead battery, you want to have it removed before it starts leaking acid, because it will corrode the motherboard, and then that will render your computer useless. And yes, for some people it may just be a 20-year-old or so computer, but for someone else, that computer is their gateway to being able to run old programs, use old peripherals, and play old games. So, if your battery is soldered onto the board, either desolder it or yank it out if it's dead before it starts leaking acid over the board. Anyway, the next couple of things, if you're American, you can just press enter and continue. However, if you don't live in America, like me, use the arrow keys to scroll up to country, press the enter button to select it, and then use the arrow keys to find your country and select it again. Do the same for keyboard layout. Okay, then scroll back down to these settings are correct, press enter. I would install setup into C:\DOS. There's no reason not to. Virtual PC users, this again will happen very quickly. Real users, this is going to take time. When your PC is ready to switch disks, it will let you know. It will usually emit a beep. Real PC users, take one disk out, put another one in. Virtual PC users who are using disk images, literally select the next image, and then away you go. And then again for disk 3. Now when setup ends, it will say please remove all the disks from the drives and press enter. To restart your computer with MS-DOS 6.22, press enter. And here we go. Now your computer will start MS-DOS unaided. However, that's only the start of it. If you want some of the DOS goodies, if you have the supplemental disk, we're going to install that now. Now, with that inserted, what you're going to need to do is type A colon, which is usually the letter of the drive that you use. If you have a B drive and you've put it into the B drive, you type B colon. Now, to set up the supplemental tools, you need to type setup, and then you need to tell it where DOS is installed. So, like I said, I've installed it to C:\DOS. And I'm just going to say to install all of it. It'll ask you what kind of graphics card you use. Now, virtual PC users, you're going to select VGA. Real PC users, if you're on something from the 1980s, it'll be a CGA or an EGA. Again, you'll have to check your manual for that. 90s machines generally came with VGA. Monochrome is basically black and white. So if you don't really see any colour on your screen, well, you won't in this screen, but if your screen is a black and white one, then you want to select monochrome. EGA monochrome is, well, basically the same but with an EGA card. VGA monochrome, again the same but with a VGA card. Hercules, that's a text adapter. MCGA and 8514 are quite old cards. And then quit is not a card, that basically just means exit setup. So basically you press the F key that corresponds with your option. I'm going to select F5. Select yes. It'll say that there's a file called iso.cpi. CPI, does that say? It's nothing to do with the Dell Latitude CPI. Do you want to replace it? I always click yes or press Y. Note, if you've installed the additional utilities from DOS 5.0, you must restart your computer before you run them. So if this is an in-place upgrade from MS-DOS 5, restart your computer now. Otherwise, eject the disk, and basically you can run any of the utilities. For example, DOS shell, which is actually literally an MS-DOS shell. Kind of provides a MS-DOS executive interface, and if you have a mouse driver installed, which we are going to go ahead and install, then you will get mouse support in this. So let's go ahead and install the Logitech Cyberman mouse driver. I've written all the files that I downloaded to a disk. I unzipped them first. So basically all I need to do is typing A colon to go to the A directory, type in install, and it's going to scan for a Logitech Cyberman mouse. Now you'll notice here that mouse support has been enabled, and it'll say please follow the on-screen instructions. To choose an option during the installation process, use Cyberman or press the enter key. Now this driver will work even if you don't have a Logitech Cyberman mouse. It's just that you won't get the extra features. And to make things run a wee bit quicker, there is an option that we are going to disable after the driver has installed. So if we click OK, I'm going to install it to C:\mouse unless you've got a good reason for not doing so. Press enter. It's going to go ahead and install. And we're going to let it modify the autoexec file. It's saved the original autoexec.bat file to autoexec.lgi. Now for those of you wondering what autoexec.bat is, imagine it as the MS-DOS equivalent of the startup folder in Windows. Basically it's a batch file, so what it is a list of MS-DOS commands that it will run in the order that you wrote them. And anything you put in there it will start, as long as it's a valid program. Do you wish to update the Windows mouse drivers? We're just going to select no for the time being, as there are no Windows drivers. Now we're just going to press enter twice to restart, making sure to remove the Logitech Cyberman disk. Now you'll notice that this is taking a while. Now we're going to fix that by typing edit /auto-exec.bat. Now we're in the MS-DOS editor, and where it says mouse dual, we're going to delete dual, because we just want to use this as a regular mouse driver. No tricks. So we'll save that, restart the computer again, and now I believe we're ready to install Windows. Before we do that, we still need to install an MS-DOS CD-ROM driver. Now you might have been lucky enough, like me, to actually have a disk with a CD-ROM driver on it that will actually install it auto-magically. However, for the rest of us, we're going to do it manually. When I say the rest of us, I actually mean those of us who've gotten a SAPI CD-ROM drive. You may have remembered me saying you're going to need a Windows 98 boot disk. Well, it would be a good idea to insert that now. And with that inserted, what we're going to do is we're going to type copy /oak CD-ROM.sys, and that will copy the file to the hard drive. That is the Oak CD-ROM driver. It works with most ATAPI CD-ROM drives. However, we need to tell MS-DOS to use this file. Now there's a couple of things that we're going to need to do first. We are going to first need to adjust the config.sys file. If you follow my instructions, you should be fine. Although I'm not going to be held responsible for any computer that goes wrong. So if you press enter when you type edit cconfigs this, here's the files. Here is the config file. Basically this configures MS-DOS to use your particular computer's hardware how it was intended to be used. Now we're not going to touch any of this stuff here. We're going to leave this stuff alone. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll right down to the bottom. In fact, let's just press enter to be on the safe side. And what we need to type here is device. So we're telling MS-DOS that there's a device equals c:/oak CD-ROM.sys. So that's saying that there's a device that uses this file. Now we need to give the CD-ROM driver a name. So what we're going to do is type /d, and this could be anything you want, but I'm going to type, well, it needs to be /d:, and then anything you want, but the usual name for this file is mscd001. Now remember that name that we've just given it, because what we're going to do now is, while we're in the MS-DOS editor, we'll save this file, then we'll go to file open, and we'll type c:/auto-exec.bat. And then what we're going to need to do, again, don't touch any of this stuff in this file, scroll right down to the bottom, and then we are going to use the MSCDX program, MSCD extension, so you spell it MSCDEX. And what we're going to do, if you remember the name we gave the driver in the config.sys file, going to type /d: MSCD001, So basically that's telling the CD-ROM extensions program to use this file, and then that will load the CD-ROM driver into memory, and it will give the CD-ROM drive a letter. So we're going to save this file. Going to exit, and then you will need to restart your computer at this point. Make sure you have ejected the Windows 98 boot disk. There we are. You'll notice a couple of things have happened. The OAK CD-ROM driver has initialized, and it's counted the number of drives. There's one in this system. If you have more than one, you might be lucky enough to have it detect both drives. And then the MESIDEX has started, and it's actually allocated a drive letter to the CD-ROM drive. Now if you want to test that out, I've got a CD in the drive right now. So I'm going to type D:, and then press enter. So now I'm in the CD, and I'm going to type dir to list, and there we go, that's listed everything. Okay, so we're about ready to install Windows. Okay, so to start Windows 3.1 setup, if you're using it from the floppy disks, go into A:, press enter, and then type, well, if there was a floppy disk in the drive, you'd type setup. However, because I'm going to be installing from the CD, one that I made, I'm going to start it from here. Now, the difference between my install and the floppy disk install is that along the way with the floppy disk version, you'll be asked to switch disks in the same way that you are with MS-DOS. However, for those of you who've burned Windows 3.1 to a CD, it will just install without any interruption. Okay, so I'm going to press enter to continue. Now, if you live in America, the Express setup should be right for you. But for me, I'm going to select the custom setup. Right, so I'm going to install to C:\Windows. And I would suggest you do too, unless you have a good reason not to. For example, you have another version of Windows installed in there and you want to install Windows 3.1 separately. Now, here I'm going to use the arrow keys. With the computer choice, unless you have a different computer, for example, one of these on this list, I would just stick with the MS-DOS system. That will work for most computers. Display at the moment, let's just set it to VGA, unless you've got a good reason not to. For example, you have an EGA card, something like that. The mouse, Microsoft or IBM PS2, that'll be fine. Microsoft 101 or 102 keyboard, non-US keyboard, again, that will be fine unless you have a good reason not to use that one. So keyboard layout, for me I'm going to select British, and then language English International, and then I'm going to accept this list. Now, the first part of Windows 3.1 install will be in text mode, the second part will be in graphic mode. Users of Windows XP will find this quite familiar, this install process, but only in that way. Now here, Windows will attempt to find a network card. If you find your computer crashes while doing that, press your computer's reset button or power it off and then on again. Don't press Ctrl-Alt-Delete. Your computer will know where it went wrong, and when you start setup again, as you should, it won't do the thing that made it crash. Okay, now I'm going to type my name in here. For some reason, when installing from a CD, company is company is set to unknown organization. If you're installing from a floppy disk or you've copied the files to the hard disk, you'll be able to put your own company name in there. Going to click continue. Product number you don't need unless you really want one. I'm going to let it set everything up. So I'm going to uncheck that. I don't have a printer, so I'm going to uncheck that. Actually, no, what we're going to do is I'll actually let it set up only the components I choose, so I can show you the screen. And I'm going to let it set up applications already on my hard disk. So we're going to click continue. Now basically what this screen does is you can select things to install, or if you don't want certain things, you can just select them all and remove them. So basically, if I did that, I'd have no readme files. With Windows 3.1, everything is installed by default. But if you want them to save space, you can unselect. You can take away the things that are a wee bit surplus. Now here, if you're installing from a CD, you can go and make yourself a cup of tea. If you're installing from a floppy disk, you will need to be around to switch disks. Right, so here is where you would set up the network. But at the moment we're not going to do that. We're just going to click continue. And it's going to ask to make changes to the system files. Unless you have a good reason not to, just click continue and allow it to make the changes it needs. Next, it will set up your program groups. And here we're going to set up applications. Now, I actually went off, I paused the video and installed a couple of things on here. Basically, a couple of typical DOS programs that a user may or may not have had on their computer at that time. I've installed Word 5.5 for MS-DOS, I've installed Microsoft Works 2.0 for MS-DOS, I've installed Sierra Police Quest, and I've installed ID Software's Wolfenstein 3D. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it search the hard drive. If you have an application you know the path name of and you want to install, basically you can do this. Basically you can choose that and then select, well, basically have Windows search in that directory. You'll notice that D drive is there as well. Don't select that. That's a CD-ROM drive. Basically you'll end up with a program group full of icons that you can not use and it'll just look a mess. Okay, so I've just selected the C drive. That's selected because that's in blue. So I'm going to search now, and it'll ask about programs identities. So for example, c:/DOS/edit.com. It's asking, what is this? Is it the MS-DOS editor or none of the above? We know that to be the MS-DOS editor, so we're going to click OK. Here we've got Word. Is it Word 5.0 or 5.5? I've just said it's 5.5. We're going to select that and then click OK. Word learn.exe. Now check the path of the file, because some files, well, basically they have the same file name even if they're in a different directory. And it will ask, is it learning Microsoft Works, MS Quick Pascal, Word 5.0 or 5.5? Well, this is Learn Word 5.5, so we're going to select that. Then it's going to ask, is this about Works? This is, well, basically the options that you may have may be different. depending on what you've got installed. That's works. And again, I've got another learn.exe, but this time it's in the works directory, so I know that to be learning Microsoft Works rather than learning Microsoft Word. And then you have basically all the applications found, and basically you can choose to add these to the applications directory. What we're going to do is I'm just going to add Word, Works, Quick Basic, Learning, Word and Works. Oh, and the MS-DOS editor. I'm not going to add any of these because, well, go on, I'll add Smart Monitor, because I've got another way to install these applications that's a lot more elegant that I'm going to show you in a minute. Just going to click OK. Now here's a Windows tutorial. This will teach you how to use Windows 3.1 and the mouse. If you want to learn that, if you want that, click to run the tutorial. However, I'm just going to skip it for now. And then it will ask you to either restart your computer or return to MS-DOS. So I'm going to restart. If you have a floppy disk in the drive, take that out now, otherwise you'll be looking at a screen that says can't read from the disk. Now those other programs I was talking about installing, I'm going to show you how to do this in a more elegant way. What we're going to do is type in CD-DOS, and then we're going to type setup/E. And basically what this is going to do is there's a few programs that came with MS-DOS that were designed for use under Windows. And what this is going to do is, if we follow the instructions, it'll say, you know, where's the DOS files installed. I would accept the default values. What it's going to do is it's going to make a program group for the DOS programs that were made for use in Windows. And then to get out of the DOS directory again, we're going to type CD:// and that'll take us back to the hard disk. Now we're going to go into Windows. And now, here we are. Okay, now there's a couple of things to do. First, we're going to need to install the video driver. Now, unless you have an S3 Trio 32/64 card in a real machine, this is where Virtual PC and a real computer's instructions are going to differ. Virtual PC seems to be quite sensitive about how the graphics card driver is installed. Now I've actually burnt that driver to the same CD as I burnt Windows. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the main program group, then we're going to go to File Manager. I'm going to click on the C drive. I'm going to make a folder now. We're going to actually store the graphics drivers on the hard disk under a directory called S3DRV. And while we're at it, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a directory called setup. I'm going to drag that into there, S3DRV. What we're going to do then is we're going to make another one called Win311. We're going to need to copy. You're only going to need the Win3.311 if you've installed Windows for Workgroups from a CD-ROM. And what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to need to copy all of the Windows setup files to the hard disk. Whoops, did that wrong. Just going to copy them. And then the S3 graphics drivers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to File, select Files, and I'm going to select all. Copy them to the S3 drivers folder. Now there's a good reason I'm doing this. It's because for some reason when MS-DOS is fully loaded, the S3 graphics drivers will not install. So what we're going to do is we're going to load MS-DOS in a minimal state, basically the safe mode equivalent of MS-DOS. Well, the MS-DOS equivalent of safe mode. We're going to press and hold Shift as we're starting the computer. Now you can see that only DOS itself is loaded. We have no mouse support, no CD-ROM support. Basically all we have is what you see on the screen. So what we're going to do is we're now going to set up the drivers. So we're going to go into Windows Setup, going to type CD Windows and then type Setup. Now you may remember this screen from the setup procedure when we first installed Windows 3.1. If, like me, you're in Britain, you're going to need to set the code page to 437. Now, what we're going to do is go up to Display, select it, and then we're going to scroll all the way down to Other, requires disk provided by hardware manufacturer. Now if you remember, we stored the setup files for the graphics driver in C:/setup/S3DRV. And there you can see it's actually found them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up 800 by 600, 16.7 million colours. Then we're going to accept the list. And the reason we copied the Windows drivers over as well is because it needs stuff from the Windows disks. If you installed from the floppy disks, type A:// into this box and then press enter after you've put the disk in. For me, C:/setup/Win311. And then away it goes. It's going to go ahead and install all of the drivers. And then we're going to go CD /. Now to free up space, you can delete these files. So I'm going to type del tree C:/setup. You want to delete the directory C setup and all of its subdirectories? Yes, I do. This could take a while, so be patient. When it's done, you'll be put back to the command prompt, at which point we're going to restart the computer and then everything will be loaded up as normal, including the high memory driver, which you need to start Windows. So don't try and start Windows in this mode, because it just will not work as well as you would intend it to. Okay, so in Virtual PC, press right Alt and R to restart. So now, when you go into Windows, you'll notice that the title bar has become light blue and everything just looks a wee bit more civilized. Now, we're going to need to install some sound. A couple of ways to do this. You could go to Main and then Control Panel, go to Drivers, ignore that notice, and then you could add the Sound Blaster 1.5 driver. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Creative Lab Sound Blaster 16 driver disc. If you download the basic Sound Blaster 16 driver file from the internet, it usually comes as one of these, sbbasic.exe. It's basically a self-extracting file. My recommendation is that you make a folder on the hard disk, sbbinst. What we're going to do is we're just going to click and drag, copy this over, and then double click, and then that will all be extracted. Delete the SB basic file. Then what we're going to do, we're going to drop down to DOS, CD-SBB inst, and then type install, and then not enough conventional memory available. If that is the case, looks like it's another trip to the MS-DOS for Yeltsin mode. Okay, so to install this software now, press enter. And what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down, press enter where it says Windows Path, and press enter again to select C Windows. There we go. So audio cards path SB16, Windows path C Windows, system boot up drive C:/. If the settings are correct, we're going to highlight proceed using the settings above, and it's actually found the card and set everything up automatically, so we're going to proceed. Again, this may not be the same if you don't have an SB16 card in your computer, and it's also going to make some changes to your startup files. Press enter to continue. Might ask you to back up the file. Let's do that in case there's any problems. And then it's going to say software installed. Then to reboot, press F10. Okay, so let's go back into Windows, and you'll find, hopefully, if it's all went well, that Windows makes sounds. And you now have a nice wee volume mixer that you can play about with. And let's see if MIDI works. I've not had the best of luck with this driver in MIDI, but I have at least had some. So let's do the Canyon test. So it kind of works better than, in the res MIDI. See if I can, doesn't seem like there's anything I can do. But that is a basic Windows 3.1 installed. Okay, sorry about that. I did have a couple of technical difficulties with Win32s. Mainly, someone had written over disk 2 with some display drivers. Doesn't necessarily matter that this is my computer. Yeah, just kind of gloss over that one. But anyway, here is a full Windows 3.1 installation. I'm going to show off some programs now that might bring back memories. Do you remember this? I do. First time I used it was 1997, by which time this had been superseded by both Office for Windows 95, one of my favourite all-time versions, and Office 97. Again, another of my favourite versions, brings back lots of good memories. But I used this for the first time and basically toward the end of 97. Loved it. Also, there's this, which I've also used. The first time I ever used it, I lost my work. Way! Hang on a minute. And of course, I've borrowed this application from a Packard Bell CD-ROM. Microsoft Money. Very nice. You can make a checking account with an opening balance of, I wish, says Bill Gates. He's got that amount. Could borrow £1 million. I don't think. Wouldn't like to try paying that back. Future transactions, never mind. Okay. Microsoft Office. So this is Windows 3.1 installed. I hope you've all enjoyed my video. Thank you for watching this. If you wish to subscribe, then please get into your web browser and head to this website. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for my next videos.